We start by priming our Mini black. It provides a base for our paint to stick to and helps with the overall shading of the model. We next highlight our base primer with white, spraying our model from directly above and at a 45-degree angle. This defines shapes for us and gives us a base to increase the brightness of our highlights that we will be adding later. We now have a pre-shaded model that helps emphasize the highlights and shadows that we will be creating on our model. We now lay down our base color of Mephiston Red by applying our paint much the same way we did in our previous step, spraying our model from directly above and at a 45-degree angle, taking care not to completely cover our black primer as we go. Slowly build up the color by applying thin coats with your airbrush while making sure you get good coverage. We apply our first highlight using Evil Sunz Scarlet, this time by limiting where we apply our paint to only where more light would naturally hit our model. Areas like the top of the head, shoulder pads, kneecaps, and the backs of the lower leg armor, taking care to not completely cover the base layer we applied in the previous step. We apply our second highlight using Wild Rider Red, much the same way we did while applying our first highlight, only hitting the areas where more light would naturally hit our model. This time though, we want to limit the application of our paint to the outer extremities of our Mini, hitting only the outer edges of where light would naturally hit our model, taking care not to completely cover our first highlight. Now that we have successfully highlighted our model with our airbrush, we can switch to a regular brush to further highlight the edges of our Mini. We do this again by using Wild Rider Red. Edge highlighting really makes our model pop by emphasizing the very brightest edges of our Mini. Edge highlighting can be a challenge. It's not always easy to freehand these very small lines. With practice though, you can achieve good results. Notice how I brace my hands and fingers on the model holder, and my hands themselves. This helps to steady our hands to apply a thin, consistent line. Bracing your arms against your body will further stabilize your hands to help with control of the brush. Now we have a completely highlighted model. We will next emphasize our shadows. We do this by applying an oil wash, only to the recesses of our model. Many of our shadows have already been created because we have built up our colors from our black base. The recess wash further emphasizes these shadows. I use oil washes on models because of its unique properties. Capillary action draws the wash into the recesses of the model, leaving the other surfaces largely unshaded. You can achieve the same results by drawing into the recesses of your model with an acrylic wash, but this can take quite a bit of time. The capillary action of the oil wash helps speed up our process. Don't worry if you make a mistake and get the wash onto unwanted areas of the Mini. Another advantage to oil washes, unlike standard acrylic washes, is that once they have dried, they are very easy to clean up. We clean up any mistakes using mineral spirits. Since our wash is oil-based, we need a solvent-based cleaner to remove the excess. Mineral spirits easily remove the oil wash without damaging the acrylic layer underneath. Simply use a Q-tip dipped in mineral spirits to wick away any excess. We have now completely highlighted and shaded the armor. We now move on to the robes, laying down a base of XV88. As you can see, we have masked our model with Silly Putty so that we don't get any overspray on the Mini. Silly Putty is the perfect masking tool for this application. It's cheap, easy to apply and remove, and in no way damages the model. Next, we apply the main color of the robes using the color Ivory. Slowly build up the color while leaving some of the base color exposed. Notice how I spray across the folds of the robes here. This leaves some of the base layer exposed, helping to create shadows for us. Now we emphasize those shadows by applying a thinned down mixture of Seraphim Sepia and water, about a 50-50 mixture. Using the wash straight from a pot can be overpowering, causing spotting. Thinning it down allows us to more easily control building up the shadow effect that we're trying to achieve. We are again going to do some edge highlighting using the color white. A helpful technique in this is to use the long edge of the bristles of the brush to apply your paint to the sharper edges of your Mini. This can help us with control. Once again, bracing of our arms and hands can aid us in achieving clean lines. Steady hands make for clean, straight lines. Don't worry if you make a mistake. Like I said before, edge highlighting can be difficult. I'm still working on the technique myself, but with practice, we'll get there. Our robes are now complete. For the relic shield, we are again going to go back to the color Ivory. It is the color of the shield's background and provides a perfect base for the skeleton and parchment we will be painting later. As you can see, we've once again utilized Silly Putty as a mask. We now move on to all of the gold details. For this, we will be using a Retributor armor. There's quite a bit of gold detail on this model, so take your time and apply your paint carefully. There's lots of small parts that once again require a steady hand. Utilize the arm and hand steadying techniques that we've been using throughout this video to achieve good results. The edges and the halo of the relic shield are also gold. Take your time to get straight lines and accurate coverage on these items. Now it's time to shade the recesses of our gold parts by using Reichland Flush Shade. Applying this shade gives added depth and detail to the Mini. It's good to use a larger brush with a nice fine point for this. The larger body of the brush is a good reservoir for holding the wash, while the fine tip gives you good control while applying the wash to the finer details. Be careful as you apply the acrylic wash and try not to get it on any unwanted portions of the model. Once dry, acrylic washers are nearly impossible to remove without damaging the paint underneath. So take your time and carefully place the wash exactly where you want it. If you do make a mistake, quickly clean out your brush and use it to wick away the wash that was misplaced. We are now going to highlight our gold by dry brushing Auric Armor Gold onto the gold details. Use an old brush to do this, as dry brushing is damaging to your brush. Dip your brush into your paint and then remove the majority of the paint by wiping your brush across a paper towel. This leaves only the very dry pigment on your brush. Now, gently draw your brush across the raised details of the model. This leaves the brighter colored pigment on those raised edges that we are trying to highlight. We've now successfully highlighted and shaded all of the gold details on our armor. It's now time to move on to the leather portions of our model. We will use the color Leather Brown as the base for our leather, and then go on to use Agrax Earth Shade to shade it. We now begin the process of shading our model using Agrax Earth Shade. When applying this shade to larger surfaces, you can use your brush to carefully move the wash around until you have the exact amount of wash you want in exactly the right places. The leather portions of the model are now complete. Next, we begin painting the silver portions of the Mini. we will be using Runefang Steel as our base color, and then we will move on to use Nun Oil to shade it. As we did with the leather, we will shade all of our silver parts with a wash, but this time using Nun Oil instead. All of our silver details are now complete. Next, we move on to the skeleton on the Marine's relic shield. To do this, we will use Games Workshop's Contrast Paint Skeleton Horde. Contrast paints are really great in the right application, and our skeleton is just one such piece. Contrast paints are like more highly pigmented washes that produce a nice base, shade, and highlight all in one step. It's a real time saver. In one easy step, our skeleton is now complete. Next, we're going to paint all the parchment. We will once again be using Seraphim Sepia for this step. Like we did for the robes, we're going to thin our wash down to about a 50-50 mixture with water. This thin mixture again helps us build up our shades slowly so that we don't get any spotting. It's much easier to control this way. Again, in one easy step, all of our parchment is now complete. We continue by painting the wax of all the purity seals. We do this by using a base coat of squid pink on all of them. We once again want to shade our purity seals, this time using the wash Quarterboard Crimson. All of the purity seals are now complete. We will finish our captain by painting the insignia on his shoulder armor. After making sure we have a good base of ivory on the insignia, we then shade the recesses with Coelia Green Shade. Apply this carefully, wicking away any excess wash with your brush. And with that final step, our Blood Angel's captain is finally complete. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and have found it informative. Please feel free to comment and I will try to answer any questions that you may have. If you would like more great content like this, please hit the subscribe button. We will have many more painting tutorials in the near future.